score.
We are live. Our names are all messed up, so give me 1 second here. Tim needs to go here. And that does it. Sweet. Hello and welcome to the Nerdosphere. I'm one of your hosts, Clayton, joined as always by the darkest mustache in the business, Corbin.
What's up?
We're also joined by the most impressive detective,
Tim Drake.
Tim
Drake.
The
It's
Red
really
Robin.
sad that it took you so long to think of a compliment for me.
Well,
I'm hurt.
Never worthy of the cowl, but worthy of Batman's legacy as a detective.
True. You're the brains.
And I'm Dick Grayson, aka the Cock.
No. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are the Nerdosphere. We discuss everything from the big screen to the small screen and anything in between, whether it be books, music, movies, TV. If you can nerd out about it, we're going to talk about it. And tonight, we're going to be discussing The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, starring Robert Pattinson. And yeah, it just came out this weekend, and we're going to be talking about it. It's going to be spoilery. We'll give you, our impressions beforehand, but then it's going to be spoilers, as always.
Not only starring Robert Pattinson, but the score done by Michael Giacchino, which also, he does a lot of Matt Reeves movies, but, that score deserves just as much attention as the star of the movie.
Okay.
Because it was in it.
Do you want to go ahead and start reviewing the movie, or do you?
No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying that if we're talking Matt Reeves directed and Robert Pattinson starred in it, the score is in it more than the star, because it's in it the entire movie, and it's great. Anyways, continue with your visit us on patreon.com/nerdosphere.
Remember, if you like what we do, scroll on down and give us a rating. We greatly appreciate it. As we said a couple podcasts ago, it seems as if iTunes has done some account purging and we lost some total reviews. We're still sitting at a pretty 5 stars, so we appreciate everybody for that. But our total reviews has gone down, and we were getting real close to that 200 review mark, and we'd like to get there. So if you haven't reviewed it, scroll on down and leave us a star rating and write something real nice if you like. If you are on Spotify, remember they have recently introduced rating for Spotify podcasts. So if you're listening to us on Spotify, give us a rating there as well. We're building up our ratings there since it just started, and we appreciate your time and effort to do so. That really does help us get in front of new people. If you really like what we do, go over to patreon.com/the Nerdosphere, where you can find out how to support the show for as little as $1 a month. That helps keep the show going, helps us think of and create new content. For $1, you get our free supplement, not free, our $1 supplemental podcast called Nerd Tea, where we just discuss random stuff. Basically, it's our chit chat on steroids, where we have a nice little 15-minute chat about something that's not necessarily nerd related, but just getting to know us as people, like office etiquette or stuff that happens in the bathroom. I can't think
spooky
of
stories.
Yeah, spooky stories.
Yeah. We're gonna be doing one on the Mandela effect.
Yeah, we did. We did a what would you rather with Jesse that kind of spawned naturally, but that is up there. So remember, that's for $1. You can support us for $5 for being able to submit questions, being able to get our podcast ad-free, other stuff like that. And then it goes up from there with more perks. But visit us at patreon.com/the Nerdosphere to find out how to become a supporter. So, now that is out of the way, before we jump into the review, is there anything you guys want to talk about?
Well, before the chit chat, I just wanted to circle back around real quick on the comment about us nearing 200, and maybe this can help galvanize our listenership. One of the reasons we want to do that isn't that the word? Galvanize?
I don't think you're using that properly, but continue. I'm going to find out.
Well, we want our supporters to be leading the charge for us because we want to be a tomato
Yeah,
approved critic.
Galvanized, it is literally just coated with a protective layer of zinc. That is what galvanized means.
So we want our audience members to galvanize our cause and to help us get to over 200 reviews, because we're meeting a lot of metrics to be tomato approved. But listen, there's a lot of dumbass opinions that are leaving reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. And we can be one of the only non-dumbass reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. And you can help us get there. So that's like why we really need to push these ratings, not just get in front of new ears, but so that our opinions can be curb stomping all those dumbass opinions. So let's do it. American History X Nerdosphere style.
You're a poet. You're the Shakespeare of our time.
Yeah, I'm a galvanizer. That's what I am.
I am galvanized right now.
You should be. For Chit Chat, there's two aspects of Chit Chat that I want to talk about. And one of them actually involves you, Clayton. So you can actually take the reins on some of the storytelling. But recently, a lot has happened since we've seen Tim last. But one of our loyal patrons and friend of mine, Matt Straight, came from Michigan to visit us here in Missouri. And it actually ended up being the weekend of Mardi Gras, which is actually a very happy happenstance. So we got to do a lot of fun stuff. But one of the things that we got to do was have dinner with Clayton. And we had a very interesting dinner experience. And I would like Clayton to talk about that dinner experience.
That's a little not fair. Like,
Why is that
you
not
come
fair?
to chit chat with a story and then you tell me to tell it? Like,
well, because I don't want to. I got two stories to tell. I don't want to dominate it. You were there too. You might tell a little bit better than I did because you were like
a little bit more better.
You heard me.
Maybe
just trying to galvanize you.
I probably won't have trouble with grammar, I guess.
I like how he said, I don't want to dominate this conversation, but then also said, Clayton, I don't give a fuck what you wanted to talk about. You're going to talk about this so that I'm not dominating the conversation. That's Inception right there. I
didn't say I wasn't going to lead it. Just don't want to dominate it.
Well, if you want to tell me. So we went to this restaurant and I don't know the name of it.
City Park
and
Grill.
It was just okay. The food was just okay. We went there. Yeah. It was a seat yourself situation. We walked in and they were like, seat yourself. So we went and we sat down and sat with Matt. We were chit-chatting and we put in our drink order with this lovely young lady. And then Morgan showed up and we still hadn't gotten our drink order. And the lovely young lady took our food order. And then we waited for quite some time. And then we noticed the young lady who took our order walk to the back corner, grab her coat and her purse, and leave. So she just left after taking our order. Now,
I'll have you know, though, when she was taking the orders, though, it was a strange experience. I understand that.
Go ahead.
Tell
the story then.
I understand. I gave you the reins, but you're skipping over the most interesting parts. I wasn't.
As you spoke over me, I was about to go over it.
It didn't sound like you were circling back around. Forgive me.
I'm over it. You tell it.
I already said my Hail Mary. You can say the rest. I'm not even Catholic.
While she was taking our order, she was acting very strange. She was wibbling and wobbling around. She was concentrating very, very hard on writing down our order. Very hard. Very, very hard. She didn't know the specials of the night. Morgan had ordered the special and asked if it was still available because it was 8 o'clock at night, something like that. And she said, I don't know. And Morgan said, okay, do you want me should I tell you something just in case? And she goes, no, I'll find out for you. But then didn't find out. And then continued taking other people's orders. It was very awkward. Then when I was giving her my order, she said, you're going to have to speak up. I can't hear you. I'm hard of hearing. And I said, okay. So then I started speaking louder. She goes, no, really. I'm hard of hearing. And I said, I believe you. And I spoke louder. And
Was she fucking with you at this point? Or you think she was really like hard of hearing?
no, we found out later that she was actually hard of hearing. It was just strange the way she. No, really.
I thought she was drunk.
And I believe you. Then she took Corbin's order, and then she blew us a kiss and walked away. A few minutes later, we see her with all of her things walking out the front door. She walks down the block, because the whole front of the restaurant's like windows, so we can see her. She walks down the block, crosses the street, walks back up the block, and then walks north up the block, and then crosses the street and disappears into the night. And we sat there for a good 15 or 20 minutes, and the other servers quickly realized, well, not quickly, but realized this person left. We gotta figure this out.
The bartender actually ended up taking our order.
Yeah.
It turns
And
out she
her
never even
response
worked
was,
there.
"She took your order." I'm so sorry.
Oh.
So
That's
we
pretty
found
good.
out later that she had worked there for 3 days. This
Mhm.
was not her first rodeo in the service industry, despite it being her first couple days. She has done it before, so it's not like she's never done it before.
Sure.
And we found out that she is indeed deaf in one ear, but just left without telling anybody.
Alrighty then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt says that he hopes every time he visits us, we're going to have an awful waiter experience now. And I said, don't wish that upon me. I want my food.
That's such a shitty thing because I imagine this place is busy or pretty busy. I mean, Mardi Gras,
It was fairly busy. There were all the tables.
you know,
were
like
taken.
you never want to be that guy who goes up. It's like, did you get my order? But
Well,
like at a
yeah.
certain point, like you see the waitress, and you're like, "Dude, I kind of have to be that guy. Kind of have to do
It
this."
reached that point because at first we were like, "Where is she going? Is she going on break? Did she even put in our order? What's
Right.
going on?" And then we sat there, and eventually like, okay, we're gonna have to say something because we still don't have drinks.
And then it all came out, and it was just okay anyway.
Oh yeah, then it all came out. And I wasn't impressed, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, the food was not that great. But yeah, it was a wild time.
Wild.
It was great.
That is crazy.
I had a crazy time last night. So I was at the movie theater seeing The Batman for a second time. And something happened. And honestly, I live for these moments. I thrive in them. Ever since they've given us assigned seating, I always get my ticket and I always go,
Was somebody in your seat?
I hope someone's in my seat. And we walk up, and sure enough, there's a mom and her 2 sons sitting in our seats. And we look at them and we go, "You're in our seats." And the mom stares at us and looks at our kids and stares at us, leans over and says something to them. And then she grabs her shit and she walks off. She goes all the way down to the front. And the 2 sons are just left there with their Crocs off and nasty ass socks on the reclined seats and their little box of food staring at us. And Joey goes, "I don't know if you heard me, but you're actually in our seats and we need you to move." And they go, "Well, we're in G 8 and 7." And he goes, "Well, you're actually in G 17, 16, and 18 right now. So we need you to move." And then they were like, "Oh, okay." And then took 5 minutes to get up, grab their stuff, slowly put their Crocs on as they're staring at the theater, at the screen, just mesmerized at the nothingness that was displayed. And I nearly drop kicked them in the face. I almost took them outside and curb stomped them. This is my new thing. I just want to curb stomp everybody. Like, what the fuck? Get the fuck out of my seat, you dumbass, and get your ass moving. But the thing that caught me off guard the most was the fact that the mom just fucking dipped. She went off to the front and was gone, never to be seen until after the movie.
This is a professional parent move that I've done many times. Now, not in a movie theater, but every single day, it takes my kids 5 minutes to put their shoes on and get their backpack when it should take them like 35 seconds. So
Yep.
my move is, all right, get your shit together, get your shoes on, get your backpacks. I'll meet you in the car. And I dip and I wait for them in the car until they get out. This is a common parent issue. Kids take forever to do the dumbest shit.
But she didn't go to their assigned seats. She just went down to the front and sat down.
Just freaking bailed.
How old were these children?
They're like 12. So their jaws was snapped very easily.
Okay.
Some vengeance.
So mean.
All right. Well,
boys, I've had a recurring nightmare of late that I got to get off my chest.
Is it a Hulu watching ghost?
No, it's not a Hulu watching ghost. We still need more information on that from Clayton, by the way.
Yeah, we do.
there's
But
no new developments.
because the ghost knows. It
Yep.
can sense you. So for the past 2 or 3 weeks, every few days, I have this recurring dream. And I feel like it's a ticking time bomb and it's ominous and it's just bound to happen any moment. And there's nothing I can do about it. But in this dream, I'm sleeping and I rip a nasty fart and actually shit myself. And I wake up and I can smell my fart when I wake up. And I'm terrified every single night that I've actually done it. We've got a puppy in the bed. We've got a dog in the bed. We got my wife. And I'm like,
It's only a
trying
matter
to
of time.
maneuver into the covers to decide, did I just shit myself or is that just the dream?
It is
It's-
only a matter of time.
It's a matter of time. I can't do anything about it. It's there. It keeps coming. Fuck.
You poor man. You will not be absolved of this until it occurs. I am sorry.
That poor man. It's poor Jody because I'm going to probably end up shitting all over Jody in my sleep and not even realize it.
And then pull a pro parenting move and just dip to the basement.
The most amazing thing is I'm waking up and I've farted myself awake in these dreams. So I wake up and I smell it instantly. I'm like, oh no.
What are you eating?
I've been eating healthier. I've been doing greens, a lot of fiber.
Okay.
So some funky farts right now. And yeah,
Funky
it's just
farts right now.
it's
I had a
matter of
dream that
time.
I peed out taco seasoning.
What?
So it was urine and taco seasoning. So you know how the toilet bowl looks when you kind of like throw up like a little bit of like a liquidy throw up and it's just kind of like misty with some chunks? It was like that. I was just peeing out taco seasoning.
That's more terrifying than my dream.
Yeah. It definitely is. It's more terrifying. Now,
The piss is rather pulpy today.
pulpy. Corbin, have you gone to go see the doctor? No.
Oh shit.
But Clayton, Hulu Ghost. Hulu Ghost.
What about it?
The audience doesn't even know that you have a poltergeist.
Who? Maybe I don't want to tell the audience. Maybe the audience is the problem. And I don't want to let them know that I'm on to them.
Well,
Why-
nope.
why-
The other way around. You
why
guys
the
have said it for
audience?
years. When something
Yeah.
crazy happens, you ignore it. It didn't happen. You don't want to give that spirit power. And that's what Corbin is trying to do right now.
He's trying
He's
to
Listen,
ignoring his own rule.
because I will always say that's the rule you need to abide by. But I'm the main character of this story, and the main character always has to make this mistake. So let's breathe this poltergeist into life, so we can have.
You're
a
not
plot.
the main character. I'm the main character. And I
You're
don't
the
want to
first
die.
victim.
No.
You're the first Because Lord knows you're going to open the door, which is a mistake, and I'm going to have to come down there and pick up the pieces, and it's going to follow me back up.
Oh yeah, last night we were playing a game. This isn't the part of the story, but last night we were playing a game, and all of a sudden I hear this like weird noise outside. And did you hear it through the thing, or did you just hear me go outside?
I heard through the thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
And you're
so there was a weird
then
noise.
I hear
and I
Clayton
was
go,
like,
what was
"What the
that?"
fuck was it?" And then I got up and went outside. And Corbin was like, "What are you doing? You can't just go outside. You don't know what's out there."
I'm gonna be the asshole who makes that unfortunate phone call to Abby, where she's like, "Hello," I'm like, "Abby," and she's like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Clayton might be dead. He went to go answer the front door. Like, you need to go check."
It wasn't the front door; it was the back door. There was
That makes it even worse.
There's
That's
a
even
weird,
worse.
There was a weird scream situation out the back. It was just my cat and a stray cat fighting. So
this is just like our Nerdosphere retreat where Corbin and I are just chilling inside, figuring out what we're going to drink, and all of a sudden we look out and Clayton's gone, and we're in the middle of nowhere, and he's just walking the woods by himself. It's all these crazy things on trees. There was like, what was there, like metal chains hanging off a tree or something? And you just went.
No, there was an significantly abandoned hunting blind that I came across. There was some old farming equipment, like the remains of a tractor out there. I did also hear talking and like revving of engine out there. So,
And let the record show it took 15 minutes for Tim and I to even receive text messages that he sent the entire time he was gone.
Yeah,
so if you had died, it literally would have been found footage of like, oh, we're receiving these texts from Clayton. He's actually been dead for 2 hours.
Yeah. The suspense. So no, I guess since you drug it out of me, we normally keep our bedroom door closed so the dog doesn't go in there. And my wife went out there last week and the TV was on, which is strange. We always turn it off. And the volume was like really, really high. We never turn the volume up really high because in the bedroom we typically just have the volume down on low as we're laying in bed, before we go to sleep. And so she was asking me about it. I was like, no. I was like, that's weird. And then a couple days later, I went out there. And I know for a fact nobody had been out there because Abby had picked up the kids from school and we all got home about the same time. And nobody had gone out there because I was the first one to open the door to our bedroom. And TV was on again, sitting on the Hulu save screen, which is the same screen it was on before. And weirdly enough, the remote, which is normally like kind of in the middle of the bed, was sitting where I lay. It definitely wasn't there when I left for work. So that was strange. A little strange. So that's where we're at. I put a camera in my bedroom, so when I'm not home, I know what's going on.
But here's the kicker, Tim. The camera he put in is only activated via motion sensor. So that's only going to catch it if it's going to be a real person.
It's not going to work.
But see, if it's not a real person, then I don't want to know about it.
I think that you would. You don't want to live there anymore.
No, because if you don't give it power, it doesn't become a thing.
Here's the thing, though. You've got 3 little boys living with you. If it wants power, it's going to find power.
Oh, it's already got it, probably.
It's going to be the hanging man outside the window.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be Andy.
Could be Jake.
Or whatever his name is.
Jake.
Yeah. That was the name.
Both. The third child has never mentioned Jake, but both Cadis and Cullen around the age of 3 or 4 have spoken of a Jake.
And how old is Finn now?
He'll be 5 in a couple days.
Finn will be 5? God damn, where's the time go? And he hasn't mentioned Jake yet?
No. But he's done other creepy things. I think I don't remember specifically, but I think one of my scary stories on our Nerd Tea was having to do with Finn.
Yeah,
yeah, it was actually weird.
His mouth is like this.
And then last night he took like role playing very seriously. The kids will sometimes pretend they're in Among Us, like while we're at the dinner table, and they'll vote on who's the imposter while we're eating. And Finn was the green, purple, and yellow imposter players all at the same time, and he was talking as if he was all 3
at the same time.
So he'd be like talking to the green one, and then the green one would talk to the purple one, and then the yellow one would talk to that. So,
well, speaking of not giving horrific things power by acknowledging them, I do have a complaint about soups. I feel like it needs to come later after we've talked about the movie some.
I mean, we are 24 minutes in, so I mean, if you want to talk about soups, I guess now's the time.
But it has to do with like the movie.
Okay. Well, tonight, as we discussed, we are discussing The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, starring Robert Pattinson, and the box office
score by Michael
take.
Giacchino.
Look, we get it. You're a Guccino stan man, okay? It's okay. It's all right. Opening weekend, coming out domestically, 134 million. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. Internationally and worldwide, or worldwide, so adding international box office, we're looking at $258.2 million out of the opening weekend, which is pretty dang good. I think superhero movies especially are back to eating good in the box office, so very impressive. And we typically will go over Rotten Tomato scores, even though, depending on our own opinions, Rotten Tomatoes is either a good or a bad source. But the Rotten Tomato score for The Batman is at 86 for critics, at 387 reviews, and at 89% for audience score, and that is 10,000 plus verified ratings. And before the podcast started, I was pulling all these up. Me and Tim were a bit surprised by this score. We definitely thought that both scores would be in the 90s because this movie is that good, in our opinion. So we pulled up the controversial Dark Knight Rises to see how it compared, and it has beaten The Batman by 1% in each category. It is at 87% critic, 90% audience score, and we just could not believe it. And then that has led us down an entire rabbit hole that I'll let Tim talk about for a minute of all the Batman movies ranked. So yeah.
I mean, this is
what?
Right?
Yeah.
All the Twitter poll. I did a Twitter poll, and all the Twitter polls are showing Pattinson as the preferred Batman.
Yeah. Well, Rotten Tomatoes has The Dark Knight as number 1, which you would probably expect.
No, it's not nearly as good as the Batman.
Lego
Dark Knight
Batman
is shit.
Lego Batman is number 2, and The Dark Knight Rises is number 3. It's shocking. This whole list is shocking. Like, you just start scrolling it right here, and Batman 89, where like the serious, quote unquote serious Batman franchise started,
right,
is at a 72. But Zack Snyder's Justice League is at a 71.
Stop it.
Stop it. I'm losing my mind here. How?
Stop it.
How?
Because a bunch of dumbass opinions around Tomatoes need to get curb stomped, and we need to have our voices heard. This is dumb. The Dark Knight Rises, I get more enjoyment out of Batman and Robin than I do The Dark Knight Rises. Because at least the jokes are purposeful. The Dark Knight Rises thinks that it's something special, and it's a piece of shit. The Dark Knight only has its claim to fame because of not only Ledger's performance, but because of his death. If Ledger was living, that performance would not be immortalized like it is today.
Disagree.
I also disagree. I will say that it definitely propelled it much quicker into the minds of most, but I don't think that him dying is what immortalized it. I do think that performance is extremely, extremely great.
It stands on its own 2 feet. I mean, so prepping for the Batman, I sat down with my oldest daughter. We watched Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. We didn't get to Dark Knight Rises yet. And Heath Ledger's performance still stands out. Like, it is one of the defining performances. And at no point when I was watching his performance did his death cross my mind. I was so transfixed about what he did with the Joker that at no point, even after, I don't know, the 100th time I've seen this movie, probably, at no point did I think like, man, and this is his last role. He died right after it. There was all the speculation that this is the role that, drove him crazy, which has been kind of debated heavily, but no, like that performance stands on its own 2 feet for sure.
And he won the Oscar that year, right?
He was wasn't he the first one to win Best Actor after passing away?
Yeah. And not that he doesn't deserve it, because you just talked about how good his performance is, but I could see the argument that he won it because he died.
I don't know what he was up against.
Yeah, I don't either.
I would say that I'm sure that played into it.
He definitely deserved it.
But that performance stands out as one of the most memorable performances of the past 20 years to me.
I don't know. I think after time, that role has been quite overhyped, especially considering like when you compare other people who've played the Joker, both in animated and live action, especially Joaquin Phoenix's, like it's not like this incredibly special thing because it still only scratches the surface of like an aspect of the Joker. Like he's still not a phenomenal Joker.
We were kind of talking just about Batman in general, and I was shocked that Batman 89 was ranked so low. It's ranked at 72%, whereas Batman Returns is ranked at 80, which I actually prefer Batman Returns. But I was shocked that Batman 89 was so low. And I saw this really great 5-minute documentary about here's what it was like when Batman came out in 1989. And it was essentially the first legitimate comic book movie that people in the late 80s were like clinging to. So you had all these like hardcore nerds that were so excited for it. And the movie got completely shit on for the whole first year that it was out because there was a stigma, which kind of crosses over to Pattinson, I think. But there was this stigma that Michael Keaton is the worst possible pick to play Batman because up until that point, he had not played in a serious role. He'd played like, I don't know, Mr. Mom or some
Beetlejuice.
And Beetlejuice, right? So he hadn't had a serious role, and the movie was dogged for the first full year, and it almost became like a cult classic. When it came out on VHS is when people really started to give it a second shot and look at it through fresh eyes. And I thought that was really interesting that Michael Keaton, who goes down as one of the most iconic Batman we've had, was shit on for the first full year. So much so that he didn't know if he would come back and do a second one because of how poorly it was received. So much so that the studio almost recast him before the movie came out after they'd already filmed because they were afraid that the movie would be an absolute flop because of how much bad publicity they were getting because of Michael Keaton being a comedian. So I don't know. I thought that was very interesting to hear about that in light of, Pattinson, who kind of had some of that too coming in.
Definitely did. Yeah.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, Pattinson was one that I was guilty a little bit of allowing the Twilight stuff to plague him, even though he's kind of done a really good job over the past 15-ish years at tearing himself away from that role and kind of expanding his filmography. I'd reached out to Yuri. I was like, yeah, let me know what you think of the Batman when you finally see it. He was like, I definitely will, but I'll let you know I've always been a Pattinson stan. And I was like, I honestly didn't even check out his filmography until I realized he was cast. And Yuri was like, well, you need to watch Lighthouse. And I was like, I did. It was great.
I will say that if you haven't checked out any of Pattinson's movies in the last 10 years, you should. He's a phenomenal actor. And I was the same way when he was announced, and I actually didn't dive into his filmography until he was announced because I saw people like on TikTok and other media sources saying, hey, give him a chance. He's not just Twilight. And I did, and man, he is awesome.
He's got skill.
He gives in this movie a masterclass on micro expressions and controlled restraint in his performance. I was continuously baffled at how expressive he could be with just his eyes in every scene. I was blown away on how, like, on the surface, he's just standing still, but you could tell when he was having an emotional response to something, or if he was thinking about something, if he was observing something. It was so fucking cool to see how he manipulated not only his eyes, but also utilizing the built-in brow of the cowl and using the whites of his eyes to create either a glare, like that was so fucking good.
Yeah, and kudos to whoever's decision it was to have like such a dark eye makeup around, because that really allowed his eyes to pop and make those micro expressions shine. So whoever, costume design, Matt Reeves, whoever, decided to pick that super, super dark and black eye makeup. Like, great job.
And I will say, before we get into like our general thoughts and the spoilers, I've been a little frustrated with some of the things I'm seeing online because, like, this has been for first of all, every Batman movie has had the actor wear black eye makeup. It just so happens that in every Batman movie, they do the thing that Clayton hates the most of when someone's wearing a hard helmet and they pull it back and it's actually supposed to be a hood. They do the same thing in those movies where even in Batman Returns, Michael Keaton is looking at Catwoman and he has the dark eye makeup on. And then he takes the mask off and rips it. And right before he rips it, the eye makeup is gone because they want his face to be clean and Michael Keaton's face. So this movie was the only one that was bold enough to say, like, no, like they are wearing this eye makeup to make the suit work, which means when his mask is off, you're going to fucking see it. And everyone's been talking about fucking emo Bruce, but in actuality, this version of Bruce is true to form given the year that he is. And Bruce was that way before the word emo even existed. So I just hate that like connotation being dumped on it because Bruce is broody. Like, that's just the way he is. He's disconnected.
A broody boy. Yeah, he is a broody boy. Okay, let's jump into just general impressions and thoughts, and then we will dive into specifics and let the conversation drive itself. What do we think? I think we've probably already made it clear, but
this is the Batman. This is the Batman movie. This is it. I've every time a Batman movie has come out, I've had to lie to myself on why I should like it, including the Nolan movies. I had to make excuses after excuses to make myself like them for what they were. And this movie gave me thematically what makes Batman fucking Batman in the comics. I was blown away.
For sure. Yep. I completely agree. I walked out of the movie and I couldn't think of one actual bad thing to say. There was only a few minor things that I noticed, like at one point a thug shoots a double barrel shotgun and when he reloads he pulls out one shell and puts in one shell. But like that's the kind of nitpicky thing that I'm saying is bad about this movie. There's not one thing thematically, dialogue-wise, acting-wise, score-wise that I can say is bad. This movie is basically perfect. I loved it.
I'm normally a prisoner of the moment. I always have to hold myself back because I'll say this is the best thing I've ever done.
Right. Yeah.
It's been especially true with PlayStation games, but I'm also on a streak where I'm playing like the all-time best games back to back to back. So, you know, it's like, yeah, God, I just beat God of War. I'm like, I think this is the best game I've ever played. I'm like, well, pull it back. I'm like, well, no, actually, like, there's probably an argument that might be the best game that there is. So regardless, I think the movie is as close to perfect as it gets. I think it's not only the best Batman movie, I think it might be the best comic book movie that I've seen.
I'm not going to go that far.
The only one that I would still say is a contender is Infinity War. I love Infinity War. Like that one's right there. But this movie like stands alone. And I think that means something. Infinity War is so great because you have, I don't know the number. Corbin probably knows the number off the top of his head. 15, 18 movies leading up to an Infinity War. So the climax was that much more impactful.
I think it was 20.
This is a standalone movie that's on the same level to me. And so I think I have to give the edge to the movie that you can watch with absolutely no context and walk out blown away. So it's as close to perfect as it gets. The only nitpicky thing I can say was a stylistic thing that I don't like that movies do is the low camera angle and the headlight shining right in your face. And that happened like 7 or 8 times in the movie where there's a flashlight shining right at the screen or a headlight from a motorcycle or a car. And that stylistic approach drives me insane because it's like blinding to you. But that's it. If that's my only nitpick of a 3-hour movie, that's a pretty damn good movie.
That's something
that was more to illustrate how characters were seeing each other. Like if Batman was shining his flashlight at someone, it's because he didn't want them to be looking at his face. He was wanting them to be.
Well, I mean, for the flashlight, yeah, but there's a whole lot of like the cars right in your face. And I understand what they're trying to accomplish. It's like a trope that I just don't like.
Okay. Yeah, I think that my buzzworded typed up review that I think is spoiler free was just like superhero element aside, because I've seen some people be like, does this deserve an Oscar? I was like, we were at the end of the day, we were giving a riveting modern spin on the noir genre. And this film is a win for cinema in general. From sound design to the score to cinematography, this movie is an absolute triumph that pulls you into a world and doesn't let you go. This movie is 3 hours long and doesn't feel like 3 hours long. Not once did I feel like I needed to look at my phone. And I've seen it twice now, and it's the same experience. So I know it's not just day one hype. It is something that pulls you in, and it releases you at the credits, and you're just like wanting more. It was such a cool experience.
Yeah, I will say that it didn't feel like 3 hours. I told Corbin after we got out, usually, even in a movie I'm enjoying, I will look at the clock to see how much time is left, just so, same reason where, like, if you're watching a TV show, you look to see, like, what episode you're on, like, oh man, how much longer until this ends? Not because it's bad, but because you really don't want it to end. And I didn't do that in this movie because it sucked you in so much, and you didn't want it to end. So I didn't want to look and see, oh man, there's only 5 minutes left, so this is going to be the ending. Like, I just wanted to enjoy it for as long as possible. To Tim's point, I still think No Way Home is better, in my opinion. I wasn't emotionally impacted like I was for No Way Home by the Batman. The Batman is great, and it is nearly perfect, but what No Way Home brought to the screen as far as storytelling, accomplishment, bringing all these worlds, different Spider-Man together, the emotion behind it, I still think that is a better comic book movie. So I can't get behind your thought that this is the best comic book movie, but it's definitely up there. I don't think that there's anything else I could say is better at this point aside from that.
Yeah. Before we get into spoiler territory, I know Corbin mentioned that he's seen a lot of bad takes on TikTok or on Twitter or social media, and I've talked to a few people that had really bad takes. And I think the most important thing I want to say here, and I think, Corbin, you want to do an entire podcast on this general topic about fan base toxicity, but this was the first time that I really saw the toxicity of Marvel fans, where, like, I've seen a bunch of like Marvel purists on TikTok and Twitter and some friends that just wanted to shit all over this movie for not following the Marvel formula, which is just like, it's the absolute worst approach, because we've been saying for years, DC should not be trying to follow Marvel's formula. That's why they've been failing, because they can't do it at the same level that Marvel is. So they need to find their own spin on the genre. And we've said the whole time, we think DC should maybe go for the darker approach, which we've seen Marvel do on the Netflix side with Daredevil and some of those shows. But this highlights why they should not be trying to follow the Marvel formula of, we're going to use a movie, we're going to have jokes throughout the movie, and we're going to use this movie to also like blatantly platform other properties. Now, we are going to get some spin-offs from this movie that we'll talk about that aren't really spoilery, but we know HBO Max has a couple of shows coming. But at no point did it feel like in this movie they were including these characters just so that they can set up their own side stuff, which is something that Marvel does, and they've done it very well. So I don't know, if you're a Marvel fan and you've been shitting on DC, we've kind of been shitting on DC, rightfully so, over the past couple of years, because they haven't done anything that's really been worthwhile on a grand scale. Don't shit on DC for this movie, because this movie is fucking great. And it's okay to like a DC movie. It's okay. When a great movie is out there, let everybody have fun with it, instead of being that dickhead in the corner trying to micro critique everything.
Now, I will say to that point, though, we've got some people in the chat talking. Did I misspeak when I said No Way Home? Or did I say No Way Home?
You said No Way Home.
You said
okay.
No Way Home, I think.
So we got a couple people in the chat. One said Marvel fan ? And then one person's laughing emoji saying No Way Home, No Way Home, I'm dying. So that's the opposite of what you were just saying. Just because I like No Way Home better than the Batman No Way Home's a fantastic movie, and just because a Batman movie comes out that's dark and gritty doesn't automatically make it great. This is a great movie, don't get me wrong. But just because I find No Way Home to be more emotionally impactful doesn't make my opinion any less. So,
No, 100%. Especially if you just go back to the comics in general. I would say the best Batman stories are some of the best in all of comics, but the Batman comic runs are not the best. Like you would get more enjoyment, or at least for me, I get more enjoyment out of the ongoing Spider-Man comic than I do the Batman comic. The Batman comics I enjoy are the ones that are mainly told in microcosms that are self-contained and not ongoing. The ongoing convoluted shit is the stuff you get when Jim Gordon becomes Batman in the bat suit and shit. Like the things that make Batman great are just those stories that, like I said, are usually in graphic novels and are mini stories. Um, so yeah, the toxicity in nerdom is fucking ridiculous, and I think that to a degree, Tim, I would say one thing that DC did as far as accurately doing the Marvel formula is just fucking caring about the source material. That when I talked earlier about having to convince myself to like the Nolan films, it's because those movies aren't Batman movies. They're crime dramas starring Batman, and Nolan had an agenda, which was how realistic can I make Batman? Which, if you're looking at the source material, that's the total opposite of what you need to do, because 2/3 of Batman's rogues galleries is not realistic. They're fantastical. So you need to be building a world where the fantastical can exist with the crime element. And so this movie was the first one that made Gotham feel like an actual place. It didn't feel like a regurgitated Chicago or New York. This was like a different place. It honestly felt like Bruce Timm's version of Gotham brought to life. I half expected to see a blimp in the sky. And we definitely have a vibe of like they could go more fantastical, and it's probably going to fit because of the gothic themes.
yeah, they could easily do Man Bat or Clayface, or Corbin, I think you mentioned after the movie that Matt Reeves has wanted to do Mr. Freeze maybe in the sequel, and those villains will fit in this version and they would succeed.
One of the things that Reeves can do for Man-Bat is he could contextualize Man-Bat with classic horror themes from like Jekyll, Invisible Man, and even elements of like Jack the Ripper. So you can still keep this detective caper of like following this mysterious string of murders. And then later you can even tap into Bruce's scientific side where he maybe tries to help find a cure. But that opening scene of the kids seeing the alleyway, right, and being scared of the darkness and having that horror element. Imagine if we got something like that. And that was the first time we got a Man-Bat reveal, and we got to see Bruce actually be freaked out by something he didn't understand. This would be a really cool element to explore, and something the animated show has done as well, as far as his battling Man-Bat could also help him perfect his gliding suit and shit like that. Like it would be a lot of fun, and it would fit perfectly.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and give a spoiler warning and dive deeper into the movie. We're going to let the conversation fully drive what's next, so expect spoilers. If you have not gotten a chance to see the movie yet, pause or step away and come back after you've seen it. But yeah, let's jump into it.
And also, Clayton, No Way Home is a far more emotionally visceral experience. I just want to make sure you have someone else in your camp, because
it definitely is. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And also Michael Giacchino film. So
yeah. Anyways,
so spoilers. This movie starts and okay.
The second it opens,
for me, the movie starts when he narrates. Yeah. But it actually starts with the Riddler watching them, and I actually had a similar thought Clayton had, which was this better be a fucking like we're gonna watch someone get murdered, because Martha and Thomas can just, I could curb stomp them myself at this point, because they just
curb stomping tonight.
I'm just so tired of them dying. But unfortunately, he didn't regurgitate that that sequence for his parents. But after the Riddler kills the mayor, we get Batman narrating, and this was when I was like, we're in for something special. Matt Reeves kept talking about how he was inspired by old noir-esque detective films, and he wanted to bring that element to life for Batman. But the moment he started narrating it, that showed how serious Reeves was at picking up those tropes from that style of movie. And I was like, we are actually in for like a noir detective film. This is so fucking cool.
Yeah, and it
I
felt more connected to the comic book too, because comic books have the narration panels to tell the story.
yeah.
It very much felt like what I felt like when reading Long Halloween or when reading Year One, Batman Year One. It the atmosphere was phenomenal, and it was very Batman. And I love how after the narration, we see that the narration is of his journal entry, and we are immediately graced with November Year Two. So we know very quickly that this is early in his career. It's not necessarily an origin story. Things have happened that we have not seen, and now we're jumping into this. Like, I love all in a 2-minute narration with that visual of his journal. We're thrown into his world and fully understand what we're going to get.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love how it's a downer feel too, where you get that vulnerability from him right out of the gate, where in a roundabout way he admits that what he's doing is not working because he's in year 2 and crime is up. So I just love how he brought that vulnerability to the character right out of the gate, and I don't feel like he really got that with other iterations of live action Batman. You never really had those moments where they're like, it's worse than it's ever been. Like, I feel like with Christian Bale's Batman, it was always, we're getting closer to them not needing me anymore. Whereas Pattinson's Batman's like, it's never been worse. I've
And
been
he's like,
doing
am
this
I
for 2
doing
years.
any good? And
Right.
that's like
That's so Batman, though.
the big arcing story is his evolution from vengeance to justice, which is just gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Yeah.
beautiful.
I also
I've-
love
I-
how, just touching on that a little bit, they touch in the movie on how he is he created Batman to solve a problem, but he's also creating more problems.
Because the Riddler is inspired by him.
The Riddler was inspired by Batman in this movie.
Mhm.
I thought that was phenomenal.
Oh, 100%.
I loved, this is the first live action Batman we've gotten where he's just this menacing presence. Like that first scene with him fighting the group of thugs,
Mm-hmm.
and you hear him walk out, and it's slow and it's deliberate and it's sending a message, and you can see like some of the crooks are getting hype, like this is our chance. And then you see like the young crook that's like not sure if he wants to be a gangster or not, questioning everything. And I love that take of him being an absolute menace. Like walking through the Nolan Batman movies, you didn't really have that feeling with Batman. It was just like crime's going down, and then all of a sudden Batman's like right there instantly, and he's there and just starts kicking ass. It was so much more effective for me to have the slow entryway where it was like, I'm deliberately trying to instill fear in the city.
Well, so
You just
much so
didn't get
that so much so that the civilian he saved was just as scared of him
Definitely.
as the thugs were. And you hit a great point on Nolan. Batman Begins, fear was a big story point for that movie, but it was told to us. We were told he was inspiring fear. We didn't necessarily see that, especially not in the way that we see in this film.
Yeah. And I love that he explains to the audience, and then it's visually given to us on how, like, because he can't be everywhere else, he has to be very careful on how he chooses his victims. So we see 3 different crimes being committed, and we end up seeing which one he's acting on. And it makes the most sense because this group of thugs are the ones that are going to run away and spread the word of, we were just attacked by the Batman. Whereas if he did the spray painting vandalism, or if he did the robbing person, that's a very small like epicenter to create. And so he's trying to do the most impactful crime convention when he can, so that it spreads the word like wildfire. And it's just fucking cool. And to Tim's point about it being this long drawn out thing, I've seen some people online have terrible takes on how this movie could have been shorter because you could have cut things like that out. And it's a stylistic choice. You have to understand scenes like that throughout the entire movie take extra time to breathe, because it ultimately creates a long going tension as the movie is continuously crescendoing as shit's hitting the fan. And it allows the characters to just actually exist in a living space. Like that kind of creative decision is very purposeful and can be misused, but Matt Reeves did it perfectly, which is why I think this movie was the right amount of length of time. And every scene that maybe some people thought lingered too long, I just think they're missing the point.
Definitely. Yeah.
I love right out of the gate too. So the film did a really good job of establishing some tent poles, right? Batman is a menace. Gotham is dark and gritty and as corrupt as it gets. And Robert Pattinson is the most brutal Batman that we've had. That opening fight is nothing like we've seen a Batman fight as. Like, I feel like when I just got done watching the first two Nolan films, if I had to come up with some weird parallel, Batman was like Jason Bourne in the way that he fought. It was very much so of like, I'm going to get you down as quick as possible so I can move on to the next thing. It's all about like, okay, I can do a throw, I can do one hit, you're down, I'm moving to the next one. Pattinson's like pummeling guys. He is absolutely brutal, which is terrifying in and of itself, that he definitely has control issues. And we see that throughout the entire movie, especially at the end, that he's constantly trying to rein it back in, those emotions that exert themselves as he's fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the brutality of Batman in this movie.
Daredevil walks so Pattinson can run.
Yes.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. I love that they were able to approach with it being year 2 and shit. We didn't have to over explain some things, like him having the contact lens allow him to re-watch his night's adventures and be able to break down clues and stuff on all of his computer screens inside the Batcave. It was so nice being able to have things like that, and they just exist. They didn't have to have a one-liner saying like where it came from. They didn't have to show how it came to be. It's just there.
It's just there.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate one of the biggest tropes, especially in superhero movies, and we see it all the time in anime, is the need to explain or even over-explain to somehow justify what you've put in your movie. And this movie just lets things exist and let things breathe, and it's phenomenal for it.
And if one thing in this movie that deserves an Oscar more than anything in the world, it is the makeup department for Colin Farrell being the Penguin, because holy fucking shit. Yeah. Colin Farrell is not present at all on screen.
He does a great job. You hear him talking about, that he was able to be free and he felt more like a puppeteer, and you think, okay. But then you go and watch the movie and you're right. There is no Colin Farrell there. He became the Penguin, and his performance was phenomenal.
And they tackle humor in this movie in a very cool way, where nothing is revolved around a punchline. It's all kind of like environmental or story driven. But like when he's making fun of Gordon and Batman for getting the law and L wrong, like that's kind of funny. But then he's like, they leave him there and he's kind of like waddling away, but it's not like super poignant and like in your face. It's a little bit more subtle. It was just kind of refreshing to have a movie like that, where every single humorous moment was not about this like explicit joke being made. It was more of just like, are you reading the context of the situation, because it's just present in the scene.
I think maybe my favorite scene had one of those moments that if you remove yourself and just think about it from a 10,000 foot view, it's actually really funny. And one of my favorite scenes is when they fire up the Batmobile for the first time. And I don't know how the theater was for you, but our walls were like shaking as the Batmobile was firing up. And you start to see the blue flame and it's about to take off, and then it clutters and dies. And everybody just kind of sits there and stares, and Penguin goes and gets in his car and drives away. And then all of a sudden he takes off. So yeah, I mean, very subtle. Like, you have to remove yourself and think about like, what was Batman thinking? He was probably thinking, this is badass. And then it fucking dies on him.
Yeah. That whole highway sequence was great. Holy
crap. I think it's like one of the best chase scenes we've seen.
So
the
Matt
fact,
Reeves,
I would agree.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say
yeah.
Matt Reeves just said in an interview that I watched today that the scene of Penguin being upside down in the car, which first of all, the cinematography of like the camera being in the car when it's flipping and stuff, and then like it being like intentionally upside down as a Batman is walking up is like it's just such a great move. But that whole sequence of the car being upside down and the camera being angled through the rearview mirror of the Maserati to see the Batmobile launching through the flames. All of that was 100% practical. It was a real explosion, a real car being flown up, and the camera actually being positioned in that actual way, which I just think is so cool because Matt Reeves is like, I know people are going to watch this and they're probably going to think that elements of this are CG, but this was all practically done. We really threw the Batmobile through the air, through an explosion. We were actually had the camera in the car looking through the mirror, and it's just so great. There's only a couple moments that I could really tell CG, and it wasn't because of bad CG. It was just I was more impressed at how practical everything was, and it was just like when the semis were crashing into each other, that was CG. With a few moments, obviously, when he was doing his air gliding, but most of this movie was flawless in its visual presentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been trained to assume CGI in these movies, especially when we've been watching, 26 to 28 Marvel movies that are filmed on blue screens.
Right.
But usually when a film exceeds or excels in its visuals nowadays, it's because things were done practically. And this movie is no exception.
I read a really great article today where they were interviewing Matt Reeves, and he was talking about what were some of the most challenging shots of the movie. And he said, surprisingly, in his opinion, the most challenging shot of the movie was towards the end. And it's the scene where Batman shows up and you can only see him through the muzzle flashes of the guns. Like there's, 4 or 5 guys with machine guns shooting at him, and he systemically just goes through and just kicks all their ass, and you see him in like flashes. And he said there was a lot of pressure because it took them so long to get that scene to say, hey, we're just going to film it and green screen it, and we'll have the muzzle flashes and change the darkness through CG. And he refused to do it. And he said, we spent so much time making sure that it looked right, that the muzzle flashes hit right, and that there wasn't glare, and that Batman looked menacing and was scary through it. And I'm in love with Matt Reeves and him saying, I want as much of my movie to be real as possible. If it means we spend an entire day shooting a scene where I've got to get Batman right through muzzle flashes, then we're going to take that entire day to do it. It's very refreshing.
Definitely. Yeah. And Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson, both in interviews, have been talking about specific Batman runs that they love. And that is always fucking refreshing when all the creatives are fully invested in the source material. Robert Pattinson and Robert Duvall. Is it Robert Duvall who plays Riddler, or is it Paul Duvall?
The Riddler?
The Riddler.
It has to be Paul Duvall.
Okay,
right?
Yeah. So Paul Duvall and Robert Pattinson are both
Paul Dano, right?
It's Paul Dano?
Paul Dano.
Okay. Well, Paul Dano and Robert Pattinson are both saying that one of their favorite runs is Court of the Owls, which you can see on my shelf here. I have a mask from Court of the Owls because it is a phenomenal comic run. But it's just another element of not only the lead actor, but the lead villain himself are fully invested in the comics that they are bringing to life. And it's just so fucking cool. And Robert Pattinson was saying that he obviously really hopes that Court of the Owls be what the sequel is about, which would be kind of refreshing compared to other Batman movies for sure.
Yeah.
His cowl looked better than I thought it was going to be. I thought one of my only nitpicks of this movie was going to be how his ears looked. And by the end of the movie, I just fucking loved everything about his suit.
Yeah, his suit was awesome. I really loved the magnetic batarang that he used throughout the movie. The suit was great. As a little tangent from what you were just saying with Paul Dano, I actually think the supporting cast, I don't think there was really a miss there. I thought John Turturro as Carmine Falcone, I thought he killed the role. I thought Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon, I thought he was a really, really good Gordon, just this really gritty New York City-like cop.
Oh, yeah.
And I even thought Zoe Kravitz was good as Selena Kyle. Very different
phenomenal.
spin. I thought every piece that needed to work worked.
if you read
when you
any
talk about these
comic
movies, they don't
with
do that
Catwoman from
usually.
the early 2000s, Zoe Kravitz is Selena. It was great. One of my favorite moments in the movie, though, is when Batman and Gordon are talking to each other, and Gordon says, "You're the only one I trust," and Clayton goes, "Mm." I was like, "Yes, accuracy."
Yeah, that was good. I was actually getting ready to bring that up. Very good.
The Riddler. So, fun fact about me as a longtime Batman fan, Riddler has always been my favorite Batman villain. And I've always hated his on screen representations because every time every time Riddler has been represented in a movie has been tonally 110% wrong. The Riddler is not zany. The Riddler is not manic. He's not silly. He is very calculative. And even though the riddles are kind of his shtick, he's an intelligence person first. And he's, like I said, he's not a silly villain at all, like we've seen with like Jim Carrey and even in the Adam West era of Batman. And I felt going into this visually, he's not the Riddler that I love, but I can also say that a bowler hat and green suit on screen probably doesn't look that great. And I think going the Zodiac killer spin was a great way to bring that menacing, intelligent element out from the comics and bring it to the screen. And I felt like my Riddler was on screen. So I've been saying a lot about like my Batman's finally here, but I have to say I was very, very happy that my Riddler was there too.
Yeah, the Zodiac stuff fit perfect because of the ciphers and the riddles and everything. It was easy to slide the Riddler into that sort of motif and that sort of serial killer, and it worked.
Yeah. And they were able to tip the hat a little bit to a really cool moment that I love with the Riddler in the Hush comic, where Batman realizes the Riddler knows a little bit more about what's going on. And the Riddler basically flat out says, "I know that you're Bruce Wayne." And when he questions, like, why you've known all this time and you've never said anything, and Riddler's like, that would ruin the fun of the riddle. Like, if I told people that you were Bruce, it would ruin the mystique of Batman and why it is that you do what you do. I feel like they're able to tap on that a little bit. Obviously, the Riddler in this movie did not put together that Batman was Bruce, but he did get to mention, like, people trying to figure out who you are missing the point of why you are. And I was like, oh, man, it's like right out of the comics.
Yep.
So
I've seen a lot of takes. People saying that they thought Paul Dano's Riddler was better than Heath Ledger's Joker. And I don't think I can bite on that. I don't think we had enough screen time with the Riddler for him to be as menacing as what we got out of Heath Ledger's Joker. Heath Ledger was this like constantly present, immovable object in The Dark Knight. Like he dominates every scene he's in, and he's in a ton of scenes. I kind of like the approach they took with the Riddler, where we're not going to have him be on the screen constantly. It's almost like Michael Myers. Michael Myers works better when he's not on the screen a lot, and he's just like this looming presence where you're wondering what's going to happen next. But I love to hear what you guys think about Paul Dano's Riddler, comparing it to Heath Ledger's Joker, because I think that comparison, this movie is going to be compared to The Dark Knight for a long time, for better or for worse. I don't think that's a fair comparison. I think the movies are very different from each other, but they're going to constantly be compared together. So,
it's because
what do you guys think?
it's that fucking self-camera angle. Because the Joker did that in that movie, I caught myself going, "Oh, they're doing what the Joker did."
Yep.
But Clayton, I'll let you answer before I talk.
Oh, I didn't even think to compare them, to be honest. They're two completely different parts, two completely different characters, and they were done two completely different ways. They were written differently, they were shot differently, they were presented differently, and they were acted differently. If I had to pick one, I guess I would probably still pick Heath Ledger's Joker, but I don't necessarily know that it's an apples to apples situation. So
if I had to pick one, I would say the Riddler, not only because I stand the Riddler, but the Riddler actually won. So the only main reason why the Riddler didn't win is because Batman realized that he needed to change his tactic to give hope. And so the whole last part of the third act where he's saving people, it's that intentional mindset of I'm now realizing that I need to be a symbol of these people to give them a reason to move forward. And that element is what's allowing Gotham to move forward and move past this. But at the end of the day, the Riddler got what he wanted. He outsmarted the Batman. He used the Batman to do exactly what he needed to do every single time to kill who he needed to kill. And he was able to flood Gotham. The only reason why he failed is because Bruce realized that what Batman represents needed to change. And so
Sounds
in that
exactly like the Dark Knight, because the Joker won because he turned Harvey Dent into Two-Face, which broke the entire system. And the only reason he won is because Batman changed his tactic.
To turn the entire city against each other using the two boats choosing to blow each other up.
Yeah,
he did not win.
His final speech with him hanging upside down is, "You're crazy if you don't think I didn't have an ace in the hole," because Harvey Dent has been corrupted. He has murdered people here, and you can't clean that up. And that's going to turn the city on top of itself. My boat didn't turn it on top of itself. But when they see the White Knight as the Dark Knight, the city's going to eat itself alive.
But they didn't see because of Batman. At the end, Batman took on the blame. And he took it on. So Joker did not win. Just because he had a small victory in turning Harvey Dent into Two-Face doesn't mean he won. Because Batman won.
Say that the only reason the Riddler didn't win was because Batman changed his approach to be a beacon of hope, and that if he hadn't done that,
he wanted
the Joker.
What he meant by that, and I don't want to speak for Corbin, is that Riddler ultimately, to have his perfect victory, would have Batman on his side, and Batman didn't join him. But Riddler still won the day. He still destroyed the city and fragmented the city, and now the city is worse off than where it started. That is not the case at all in The Dark Knight. The Joker lost.
Sounds very similar.
I mean, am I wrong, Corbin?
Recording stopped.
And we lost Corbin. He wanted nothing to do with it.
He is done.
Oh,
he is
goodness.
done. But you have to admit, had the city of Gotham woken up and seen that Harvey Dent had killed everybody.
But they didn't. I mean, you're saying what if? It doesn't matter. They didn't.
I still think Joker won. It wasn't a full victory.
He didn't win.
It wasn't a full victory, just like the Riddler's victory wasn't a full victory.
The only reason the Riddler's victory was a full victory, he just wanted Batman by his side. The Joker didn't win. He had a small victory in succeeding in turning Harvey Dent, but ultimately his plan on the boat failed, and ultimately his plan with Harvey Dent failed. He did not win. The city did not turn against itself. The movie ends on a positive note. Batman takes on the role of the Dark Knight and taking the blame for everything that Harvey did. Well, apparently you don't, because you think Joker
I understand
won.
because I don't think Riddler's whole shtick was, I want to destroy the physical structures of Gotham. His whole shtick was, Gotham is a corrupt, disgusting city, and that corruption needs to end, right? That's why the whole time it was about, like, Gotham was built, the Arkhams and the Waynes are built on lies, and I'm going to bring those lies to truth, and we are going to purge the city. And he started the city.
He started the purge of the city. Riddler won.
I don't think he won. Riddler didn't win.
He brought corruption to light. He flooded and destroyed the city.
But the corruption was well known. The corruption's well known.
The corruption was not well known. That's why in the entire movie they were like, "Oh my goodness, this person's corrupt. Oh my goodness, this is corrupt. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness." It was twists and turns the whole time.
I don't think I got that feeling anywhere. I think
it was dialogue lines in the movie.
I think he was showing the corruption. People didn't understand that the corruption is at the very foundation of the city and how the city was built with the Arkhams and the Waynes. But I think it's pretty well known that, like, the Penguin is a mobster and Falcone is a mobster, and
Yeah.
they're freely walking around.
They found, yeah, that doesn't mean, that just
That's
means
corruption.
that crime is running rampant.
And
We
it only
find
runs
this
rampant
movie is
because
about
it's
finding corruption in the city. We must have
So
watched
the
two
city-
totally different movies.
The city had no clue there was corruption, but everybody knew that like Falcone and the Penguin are the most corrupt people running a nightclub.
That doesn't equate corruption in the city. That just equates to a powerful criminal element in the city.
Which you only get those powerful criminal elements long lasting through corruption.
Maybe not. You're saying things that are, you're assuming things when the movie specifically gives us story beats and dialogue beats that we are discovering this corruption with the characters. So you saying it's obviously well known is not an accurate statement, because the movie makes a point to tell us and makes a point to show the characters figuring it out and being surprised that there are corruption.
I guess I don't remember anybody being surprised by the corruption.
Gordon and Batman have a whole
that,
conversation about how, I can't believe this person's corrupt. Oh my goodness, they're talking about the DA. Oh my goodness, the DA's in on it. And then when they discover the club inside the club and all these people are inside it, he's like actively getting all these face recognitions because they need to know who's in on it.
Yeah, I don't think they knew specifics on who was corrupt, but I think Jim, I mean, like you said, Gordon said, "I only trust you."
That was towards the end of the movie. It was after all this had developed. And
I mean, they'd
was
already had a
coming out.
relationship before that, so I have to imagine.
He says, "I only trust you," after they had to get him out of the cop precinct, after this buildup of corruption was being released.
We're going to agree to disagree on this because I do not think the Riddler won. I think if his whole intent was to blow up some buildings and flood Gotham, then he could have just done that.
He brought all the corruption to life. What did he not accomplish aside from him thinking that Batman was on his side the whole time? What did he not accomplish that he wanted?
Well, I think he didn't just want physical destruction. He wanted the city to absolutely implode. Maybe it will.
It is imploding. There's dialogue and narration at the end talking about how the city is imploding.
The dialogue I remember at the end is not about the city is imploding ramping. Because
the city is worse
what
now
the
than
Riddler
what it was.
Did. That was at the beginning.
No, it's at the end.
It's at the very
when
beginning.
When we're seeing the entire
okay, we're
city.
Off the rails.
We're not off the rails. When you see the city, he's narrating at the end. It's panning across the flooding waters. He is talking about how crime is getting worse. He is talking about how the Riddler got what he wanted.
He's saying that, but like the ending of the movie is a bunch of people who are standing on top of a building because the city's flooded. So like, what crime is he talking about? Because what he's see at the end of the movie is essentially Hurricane Katrina, where
he's telling us about it.
I don't think the Riddler won.
Okay. Corbin's calling me. Hang on. Because you're excited. His computer's being crazy and ruining our podcast. He asked us not to wrap up without him.
Are we still live?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to mute my mic and answer this phone call, I guess.
I will say that I think one of the most important objectives for the Riddler was to make sure that Real was killed. and he failed at that as well. Because she is essentially the pure Harvey Dent at this point. She is the person that can fight that corruption.
He's back.
That was fucking annoying as shit.
You missed a heated debate about whether the Joker won or not. Tim doesn't think he won, even in the slightest.
You mean the Riddler?
Yeah.
He doesn't think the Riddler won.
No.
The whole point of the Riddler was to kill who he needed to kill, manipulate Batman to do those things, and also successfully set off all the bombs to flood Gotham, and did so.
Who was one of the most important targets at the end that would crush the hope of the city of Gotham? Who was the most important target when he was in the asylum?
So
it was newly elected Real, and they didn't kill her.
Wait, here's the deal to your point. They didn't have specific targets. They were just there to shoot and kill people.
Oh, he definitely wanted her dead.
Gordon made a point to say, we cannot let you die.
But
there was never a point in the movie where Riddler said, kill the mayor-elect.
I mean, what the hell else are they there for?
His only goal was chaos.
His goal was to make the rich elite say, why me? Just like the lower middle class always live their lives.
Yeah, his target was the upper wealthy. So technically, she wouldn't have even been a target, except for just random kills.
You mean to tell me that you think political leaders aren't upper wealthy?
She wasn't a part
nature?
of the corruption that he was trying to expose.
I thought you just said he wanted the rich to say, why me? Just like the poor.
The rich.
She's the definition of rich.
You think that brand new mayor-elect, which we were given the entire movie to think she is the every woman going against the wealthy elite, is the wealthy elite?
I think if you're trying, well, yes, first off, I think if you're the mayor, you are wealthy elite, regardless of what your angle is.
Maybe you're not after walking you become the mayor, then...
Well, how do you afford to run for mayor? Have to have a whole bunch of money from... I think if the goal is to strike fear into the healthy
and regardless
elite,
of your political affiliations, that's like saying when AOC was running for Congress, that because she was running for Congress and could afford somehow to run for Congress when she was a bartender, that she is suddenly now wealthy elite.
I think she represents a shit ton of wealthy elite people, and if you murder that and there's no ability to backfill it, that makes the destruction of corrupt Gotham that much more complete. Why else would he have had sniper rifles there? It's not like he said, come with bombs. They were specifically saying, what caliber do I
rifles need? They brought whatever they had. People had shotguns, people had rifles, people had pistols, people had knives.
That's why in the chat they said rifles are easier to get.
At no point did you feel like, okay, now their goal is just to start killing everybody. It was very
exactly
clear.
How I felt. How did you not feel that?
Because the first target was the mayor. The very first target was the mayor. The first shots fired were at the mayor. It's not like
Easy shot.
It's not like hellfire rang down from the 500.
You're telling me that the 20 people there with rifles that had zip lines all across everywhere were all there to just kill the mayor? No,
I think
they were there to kill.
The mayor.
They were there to kill as many people as
that
possible.
That location was the emergency evacuation location.
Away?
That's why they were there.
They didn't start blasting away.
Because the wealthy elite were going to be the ones in that stadium. That is why he did it.
Was the goal to bring Gotham down, to crumble Gotham's infrastructure? Because it's so corrupt,
the goal was
it just needs to be destroyed.
The wealthy elite corruption and bring chaos to the city. Because you
don't think killing the newly elected mayor brings chaos to the city to a new level.
I never said it wouldn't bring chaos.
But that was not the goal. So because she is alive does not mean the goal failed, because the goal was to not kill the mayor.
I think the goal was to kill Gotham.
Was to kill and strike fear into the wealthy elite.
I think the goal was
which he still did.
Yeah, the goal was to begin the end of Gotham. And he did.
And even Batman said, even with his paradigm shift, things are going to get much worse before they get better right now.
I tried to tell him that, and he said, no, that was at the beginning.
No, at the very end.
That was at the beginning and the end.
As they're literally focusing on Penguin.
Penguin,
looking at his new kingdom to claim.
Wait, and then he said it didn't matter because at the end, they show Batman rescuing people. So it doesn't matter that Batman said it was getting worse.
Now you're just putting words in my mouth.
No, I'm not. We can go back and listen to it.
I'm saying that the ending for the Joker is very similar to the ending of Riddler. The Joker's objective was to bring Gotham down, and his ace in the hole was to do it through killing an elected official, or having an elected official become a monster, which would make the city tear itself apart, which would release the thousands of criminals that he just persecuted because he was no longer the White Knight. And the only reason he failed was because Batman decided to take that on.
Well,
towards the end of this movie, doesn't Batman make the statement that I have to change my tactic to bring hope to this city? Because without that, Riddler would have won.
The whole point of this entire conversation was that you were saying the Joker won. And he didn't.
No, I'm saying that
You just said he failed.
I agree. No.
The whole point to this conversation was you said he won.
My whole point is that their endings are the same.
They're not the same.
They're the same.
They're not the same. One,
they're
Batman
the exact
is actually
same.
a comic book accurate Batman.
That has nothing to do with anything.
That has nothing to do with it.
Their ending is the same. What
villain,
Riddler wanted is what the Joker wanted, and they both essentially ended up at the same spot. And that's where this whole conversation started, with me saying that's why people were comparing Heath Ledger to Paul Dano, because there's so many similarities between what they were trying to accomplish. There are similarities
to what they were trying to accomplish. You're right, but
as with
the
every
movies
Gotham
and the
villain.
storylines end in two completely different places. Batman saves the day. Nothing is ruined. The city continues as is. It's vastly different in The Batman. The Riddler accomplishes everything he set out to do, except he was wrong in the fact that Batman had the same mindset as he did.
Because they're going after the same people.
He exposed all the corruption. He killed numerous high-ranking officials publicly. He destroyed and flooded the city, causing chaos, mistrust. We are going into the next movie down, from a down point.
Maybe not.
Nick says, read my comment on YouTube, yo.
That's like saying, like,
in the chat we've got
that's like saying a city
Riddler definitely won. The goal was to topple the antiquated leadership that allowed Gotham to become so corrupt in the first place, not being the city and not bringing the city.
How did they topple the antiquated leadership? The new mayor-elect is alive. What antiquated leadership is still around?
Tim, the new mayor is not a part of the antiquated leadership.
What antiquated leadership are you trying to topple?
Al Cohen has been the mayor for the past 20 years.
He hasn't been the mayor.
He's been he said they say it in the movie that Falcone is the de facto mayor of the city because he has got everyone in his pocket.
Just like the mob in Dark Knight. It's the same storyline. It's Batman storylines. The mob runs the city. It's a corrupt city both ways. We are so far off the rails at here. We got to get back
Talking
on.
to you sometimes is like
What's
talking
funny?
to
What's
a
funny is
You
that
guys are
Clay-
acting
Clay-
like cities don't rally around a disaster. Like when Hurricane Katrina hits, like the cities don't rally and rebuild and end
No,
up in an
we're not acting that
exponentially
way.
better
We are
spot
going
than
off
where
of
they are right now.
information given
No,
to
you're
us by
saying
the
city
movie.
is. You said when the next movie starts, the city is going to be in a worse spot, and that's not necessarily true. It's possible that the city rallies around
This
it, just like
movie
every
ends in
city
a
in the
worse
United
spot.
States has rallied around a terrorist attack and said, "Hey,
Batman-
we're together. We're going to make this
Batman
stronger."
literally says
It's going to
things
get
are
worse.
going to get much worse.
We're
before
only
they ever
using what's
get
given to
better.
us in the movie.
And he says that as the Penguin is now looking over at his new kingdom to claim, as the criminal underworld now has Gotham ripe for the picking.
Batman's words, not ours.
I hate you guys. I hate
It's
talking
Batman's
with you
words,
guys.
not ours.
I hate talking with you guys because you guys are so fucking close-minded to a different interpretation of the movie. You think Riddler won? I don't think Riddler won. I think
But
You
but I
s-
keep asking you to tell me how he didn't win, and you cannot tell me how he didn't win.
I've told you how he didn't win multiple times.
N-
He hasn't
say it
effectively
again.
changed anything except for flooding the city. He hasn't changed shit.
He exposed rampant corruption.
And what the fuck does
he
that matter?
caused the
He
death
exposed
of
it to
the-
people who aren't changing it. He exposed it to the people who probably knew it was there the entire fucking time.
Gordon didn't know it was there. The mayor
Crime was
didn't
at an
know it was there.
all-time high. Crime was at an all-time high at the intro of the movie. He starts by saying, "I've been doing this for 2 years, and crime has never been worse."
Yeah.
You have to assume that your infrastructure is fucked when crime when it's at an all-time high, when it's at a point where a vigilante comes in and it even gets fucking worse. You think people are stupid and they don't sit back and
Okay.
realize, like,
There is
we have got
also
a
a
fucked up
difference.
city.
There
Our
is also
system
a
doesn't
difference
work.
between knowing the city is fucked up and knowing specifically why it's fucked up. This corruption was not known.
No, especially
and
because
that's not to
of,
say, Tim, you keep getting hung up on this. That's not to say that corruption wasn't there or that they didn't somehow know that there was generalized corruption. This specific corruption, the specific players behind it, was not known.
I mean, I
which
guess
is why
if you
the DA
think
was
them
willing
shining
to
a light
die
at, like,
and not say
the
anything. And
Waynes
Riddler
being
was
involved in a
saying
murder from
that
30 years
Gotham
ago
is
is
a
going to
powder
blow
keg.
the city
The
apart.
moment,
A
the
murder
reason-
that's happened 30 years ago.
I mean,
a
that was the
family
whole point of
has
the
not
movie,
been
so-
a movie that has not, or a family that has not been impactful to that community for 30 years. The mayor Real says, "Hey, you guys used to be super impactful. Where have you been for the past 20 years? This family seems like they're an antiquated family in the
It
area."
was the whole point
Cool.
of the
You
movie,
guys, you
so
guys
I'm
were
confused.
important to the infrastructure of our city 30 years ago, but you've done nothing for us in my lifetime. Yeah, you're right. That murder that happened 30 years ago, it has shredded my soul.
I'm confused by why you bring
the
that
murder
up.
that happened 30 years
You're-
ago.
It's the whole
That's
point
is
to
what
the
that's
movie.
he
allowed
was
the
shining a
renewal
light-
fund
he
to
was
fall
shining
into
a
the
light
hands of
to.
corruption
He was
that
shining-
allowed them to rule the city,
He
and
was-
the people didn't know about it.
It was the whole
Which is
point of the
why
movie.
Gordon said Gotham is a powder keg. Now that we're unraveling this, because the city is going to tear itself apart when they realize that every single aspect of the leadership of this city is actually in Falcone's pocket.
Which was not known before.
Who is now dead.
Now,
Who is now dead.
and that was the whole point, was to bring it all down. Got another thing
sorry.
from the chat. They knew the lower level city officials and beat cops were corrupt and rampant levels, but had no clue that the city's leaders were so knowingly involved in the city's downfall, is what's in the
Right.
chat.
And keeping the uncorrupt official, the beacon of light, alive really helped his cause. He didn't fail. You're right. The symbol that says, "I want everything to be equal and fair," that was her whole campaign, was equality and fairness.
I would say that the
And
Riddler probably
and they
agrees
left
with
him
that.
alive.
The Riddler
You
was
would say
trying
that-
to expose inequality and corruption from the privileged elite.
He was also trying to completely destroy Gotham to where it was unrebuildable. So he failed in doing that by leaving the beacon of hope alive.
The
A
mayor is not
person
the
that
beacon
will.
of hope.
The mayor's
What?
definitely not the beacon of hope.
You're comparing.
Who's the beacon of hope then? You think it's fucking Batman at this point?
No,
He is at the end.
he tries to
That's the
become
whole
at the
point.
It's
end.
the mayor.
He
It's
tries
the
to
mayor.
become at the end.
You know what's happening? Batman's helping people up from the water, and what do they pan and show? A huge group of people on top of a building rallying around the mayor. That's the beacon of hope. That's the person that's going to get shit done on a big scale. It's not Batman. It's the person that's actually going to be in charge of rebuilding the city.
Well, if Batman wasn't emo
Maybe
before,
they'll
he's
make-
sure
maybe
as
they'll
fuck
make
going to
Batman-
be emo now that you've said that. As
Maybe-
Batman's narration is, I've realized now that I will never do as much good doing vengeance,
Maybe.
fixated on the past, than I
No.
will as
Yep.
being
No.
a
I
beacon
have to
of
be
hope,
a
looking at
beacon
the
of hope,
future.
not I'm going to be the beacon of hope
Batman
for all
2 is
Gotham. I am
about
going to
the
be the one
mayor.
that rebuilds the city brick by brick.
This
Batman 2
mayor
about
is
the mayor.
not the equivalent of Harvey Dent, and Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight is a metaphorical line in a poem. Like, him being corrupted is not at all the same thing as Riddler drowning the entire fucking city and making the whole city aware that every piece of leadership was actually corrupt the entire time.
The most
Batman taking the
influential-
blame instead of Harvey Dent taking the blame actually deflates the Joker's cause. So if we're going back to the thing about who won, the Joker never won.
Oh, I
Because
agree.
Batman
they both lost.
took
They both lost. The
Hey,
only
Corbin,
reason they both
when you're
lost.
when you're editing, will you go back and clip when he said Joker won and put it right here, please? Thank you.
You didn't let me finish my statement because you guys are assholes who constantly interrupt.
We'll see. I'm
It's your
pretty
way
sure
of
you went
trying
on
to
for a while
bully.
before I
I said,
before I interjected.
I said it sounds
We'll
like
find
the
out.
exact same thing because Joker won until Batman took that back on himself and said, I'll take the fall for what he did. Because had Harvey Dent been shown to have murdered people, the thousands of criminals that they locked up through the money laundering scandal would have all been released. All of them. The corruption of the city would have been spotlighted. It sounds pretty similar to the ending here where like Batman says, I'm going to be the beacon of hope. We've got a solid infrastructure. We're going to rebuild with me.
I guess what I'm going to say to that is the Joker was building up fake, quote unquote, corruption because he corrupted Harvey Dent and turned him into a murderer. And that alone would have gotten everything he did up until that point, which was not done shadily or corrupted, undone.
Right. That's taking the element of the man who laughed. The Joker says all it takes is one bad day. The Batman, all it's going to take is one bad day to drive the sanest man alive to lunacy. That was his whole goal, to show that the uncorruptible could be corrupted. It's a vastly different tactic. And he lost because the uncorruptible to the eyes of the public was uncorrupted.
Felt like both men's prerogative was to destroy the city.
This all goes back to the original question on which villain is better, and the villain that is better
that's
for
typically
me.
the goal of any Gotham villain, but I feel you.
Yeah. The Gotham villains are like Star Wars villains in that there's always a giant army or planetary weapon to destroy planets. Every Gotham villain is, this place is a cesspool. I'm going to burn it all to the ground.
I mean, I feel like there's also a huge sect of Gotham villains that are just straight gangsters like the Penguin and Falcone, where that's not their prerogative. Their prerogative is that they're going to be mob
Well, when we're
lords,
talking about
essentially.
typical rogues gallery elements, we're not talking about the mobsters. We're talking about the named supervillains.
Yeah, like the Penguin would come to mind.
But this all goes back to who is the better villain. And for me, it's the Riddler because he actually won his objective.
The question was who had the better performance, not who was the better villain. I was comparing Heath Ledger to Paul Dano, and I said it's hard to compare, but I would say Heath Ledger won because he dominated every scene that he was in. And Paul Dano was not in enough scenes to make that kind of mark on the film.
I agree with that.
That was the question.
I agree with that.
Riddler was the better villain.
But who was
And
the
this
better actor?
is quintessentially the nerdosphere, us arguing about something that we agree with, because Clayton agreed that the Joker was the better villain, but he also agreed that the Riddler won. So he was agreeing with Tim for different reasons than what Tim thought he was agreeing with on, which put him on my side.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll find out if the Riddler won or not by the time we get to the next movie, which will probably be in 3 years because it took them over 12 months to shoot this film. I read today, which is crazy.
That is,
so
yeah, but COVID also.
So it's going to be a while.
For a long
so
time.
We will find out if the city is tearing itself apart because of the corruption, or if they're rallying around the beacon of hope that is the new mayor and going to rebuild and root it out systemically.
That we're not starting off in a better place.
I don't think we've started off in a better place in any Batman movie. Granted, I haven't seen The Dark Knight Rises in a while. I don't remember the very, very beginning, but I don't think it starts off in a better spot.
Doesn't The Dark Knight start off in a better spot? Like everything's kind of going smooth, and then the Joker comes in to like fuck it all up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Batman's almost got like the criminal element under control. Like
he's talking about maybe putting it up, especially now that Harvey Dent's around.
He's talking about putting it up because he wants to run away with his love interest, but there's also several other masters.
There's no love interest. We're talking about Dark Knight.
There is a love interest. What are you talking about? The whole reason he wants to put it up is so he can go be with Rachel. That's the whole. That's his whole motivation for putting it up.
But he thinks that he can leave it because it's Harvey Dent's there. He's got it under control. He's not really needed anymore.
I mean, I don't know if you can say it starts off in a better spot or not. There's a bunch of low-level Batman wannabes that are trying to protect the city and failing. And the main bad guy, from a Gotham standpoint, is on the loose and in the very first scene. From Gotham standpoint, it wasn't Ra's al Ghul. It was Scarecrow. He's the one that fucked the city. And he's free. He's in the very opening scene doing a drug deal.
And isn't it insinuated that like he's kind of come out a couple times, kind of like typical Batman fashion, where he's behind bars and then comes back out?
I don't think so. I don't remember.
We're not here to talk about the inferior Batman movie. We're here to talk about the Batman. Okay. We had a Riddler. We had a villain that 100% of the time manipulated Batman. The only thing that Riddler failed at was assuming that because they both wanted to expose corruption, the Batman would be on board with Riddler's methods. At the end of the day, the Riddler manipulated the greatest detective. He outsmarted the greatest detective. He exploded and drowned the city. But because of all this allowed Batman to realize he now needed to change his tactic on how he approaches the Batman, which is really cool and beautiful and poetic because the Batman inspired the Riddler. And then the Riddler inspired the Batman to change, which is a really cool thing. So the Batman was a fucking phenomenal film.
It was, but that's also that same thing you said applies to The Dark Knight.
It does.
Batman inspired the Joker to be a thing, and then Joker inspired Batman to be a different thing that he didn't want to be.
Oh my God. You're such a piece of shit.
Hugs and kisses. The Batman was great. I started the podcast by saying I think The Batman's maybe the best comic book movie ever. So just don't forget that I said that.
It is great. And of course, all of this comes from a place of love. I mean, we're arguing about...
I don't love you guys. I hate you assholes.
Fuck. God damn.
Why?
I mean, I could understand...
Clay and I talk like this to each other all the time, and he's one of my bestest friends.
Yeah, you guys are my best friends, but I hate you sometimes too. I love to hate you.
All right. Well, at this almost 2-hour-long situation...
I was so eager to get back in the chat because like, don't wrap up without me because I have so much more to say. And then we just got fixated on where I dropped out of the chat with. And now I'm trying to think of like what was so important for me to say that I wanted to be a part of. I don't know, but
it's not worth it now. We've said enough. We've taken up on enough time.
You're right.
There's no more to be said. Go see this movie if for some reason you haven't and you've listened this far. If you have,
what are your thoughts? Let's open a poll up.
Yeah.
Was the ending of The Dark Knight and the Batman the same?
Was it similar? Not the same. Obviously not the same.
You kept saying it was the same.
There's similar.
You kept saying it was the same.
The themes.
Corbin, can you do a super cut of every time he said it's the same? right here, please.
Are the themes in the Dark Knight and the Batman the same?
No.
And you're cheapening the Batman by saying they are.
You are. You very much are. That's a great point. You need to stop right now.
If someone listened to this point and hadn't seen the movie, you are now making a cause to not see the movie.
If they listen to this point, if they're listening to this point and haven't seen the movie, they probably didn't plan on seeing the movie anyway.
They're waiting for video. They're waiting for DVD, VHS.
This is an important thing. This is a very important thing. The Batman hits HBO Max next month. So you should go see this. You should go see this movie in theaters because it is an incredible movie theater. It's an incredible movie theater experience, but it also hits HBO Max 45 days after its release.
That's
so
fucking
it will
awesome.
be on HBO Max next month.
Because I'm itching for another rewatch. I now remember what I wanted to say before we left, Clayton. Fucking Soups. No. I try not to bring him up.
Soups.
Because I try to avoid him at all
He's
costs.
Like the spirits that we talked about, the poltergeist. Don't give him any more power.
He had a TikTok today that came up my FYP that had my blood boiling because these are all the characters that are teased in the Batman. Let's go. And then he says,
the Joker.
Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, has been teased because Gil, the DA, is now dead, which now opens the door for him to be introduced. Another Batman iconic villain that is teased in the Batman is Bane, because we see green goop injected into Batman's legs. It couldn't be adrenaline. It's venom.
Oh yeah, it's not.
I saw something
Batman's
similar.
Injecting venom in the Batman. Yeah.
Like
I also
Batman
saw him say,
just pummeling the guy in the beginning is just why I want to do the Soup's face when he says stupid shit like that. Like I'm like, read context.
Hey, it works for him. He is so much more famous than we are.
Movies will intentionally tease shit, but understand when they're not. Gil dying does not just inherently mean that Harvey Dent is now going to be the next DA. Because he's injecting himself with adrenaline does not mean he's injecting himself with fucking venom.
The city of Gotham is flooded, which confirms that Killer Croc will be the villain in the next
You heard
movie.
it here first.
Exactly. You heard it first. The other thing that Soup said was, if not Core of the Owls, the next villain needs to be Hush. And I really think the internet needs to get off of this. They need to get off Hush's dick because the Hush comic is phenomenal. But what makes the Hush comic phenomenal is not Tommy Elliott.
It's Jason
who
Todd.
is Hush. It is the emotional trauma that Jason Todd might be alive. And you cannot do a Hush story without it being earned and having a more robust rogues gallery and more history with Batman. So fucking get off this Hush hype train because him as a villain alone is not cool. It's everything about the story that unfolded in the 2-part graphic novel.
Yes.
And it was about everything else about Batman's life coming up to the light.
I said it before and I said it again. I really want Man-Bat.
Man-Bat would be so fucking cool. And Clayface would be so much fun. I want to see unique Batman villains moving forward.
Man-Bat would be so much fun. Can you imagine?
Noir, so I ask you, audience members, what is a cool Batman villain
and the
you want to see?
Turns out to be. It could even be like in the Batman animated cartoon. People kind of thought Man-Bat was Batman at first, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And have it be like, oh, Batman's like killing people. We got reports of a bat attacking and killing this person. It has to be Batman.
Yeah. I'm okay with Joker being teased, but I hope he's not in the next movie.
No, he will be.
Let that lie.
I don't think he'll be the next villain. I think he'll be in the next movie as another way to kind of build that character arc. I think you're going to probably figure out pretty quickly based on what this haunted Arkham TV show is going to be. If it really, they could use that as a platform to really build the Joker up, which would lead me to believe maybe there's a good chance he's going to be a big part of the next movie.
They could build up a lot of people in that show, though.
If he's not really mentioned in this Arkham television show, I think you got to wait on Joker another movie. I don't think you can dive right back into him.
I do want us to normalize in superhero movies, especially with characters that have robust rogues galleries and like being impossible for each movie to just be about one or two. I do want us to normalize the concept of like them existing and them not being the villain of the story. So I do think you could have Joker in it and him not be the villain. Like, I think
Yeah.
that we need to normalize that so we can like introduce more characters, so we can have bigger stories down the road more quickly. But to Tim's point, and then I'll let you take us out, Clayton, because I have nothing else to say after this, is just the 2 spinoffs that HBO Max is now making. Originally, Matt Reeves was going to do a Gotham PD show taking place in year 1, following a corrupt cop in the Gotham PD. And then in the background, you basically see like Jim Gordon encountering Batman for the first time and like his presence being known. They're no longer doing that. They're now focusing on an Arkham TV show that Matt Reeves has described as a horror film / haunted house approach to Arkham. And the other show that still is being made by them is a Penguin show. And I misspoke when I talked to you guys earlier in my chat. I thought the Penguin show is going to be about him taking control of the criminal underworld, but it's supposed to be his origin story. And that to me seems far less appealing because he was like a fuckboy for Falcone. Like, I don't want to see that. I want to see him be the head honcho of the Iceberg Lounge.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
Honestly, who cares about either? I really don't care.
I would only care about Arkham if it allows us to introduce more villains.
Creepy villains
that are like already there. You know what I mean? So they can break out.
You did have almost 2 years worth of stuff happening before.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does it for this week's The Nerdosphere. Let us know what you thought about the Batman in our social areas. Remember, you can find us over on Facebook. Just search The Nerdosphere. We have a giant community on Facebook groups. Just search for The Nerdosphere if you enjoy mostly nerd memes, but also other nerd conversations and content. You can find us over on Twitter by searching Nerdosphere YT. Or no, we're Nerdosphere Cast over there now. Did I change that? Nerdosphere Cast. And you can find us on Instagram as well. If you search for The Nerdosphere, just look for the N and you will find us. Remember, if you like what we do, scroll down and give us a rating. We appreciate all the ratings that we can grab from y'all. We appreciate the ones we have received so far. If you really like what we do, go over to patreon.com/thenerdosphere, where you can learn how to support the show and earn exclusive perks. Until next time, we'll see ya. Bye-bye.
Bum, bum,
See ya.
bum.